At the dawning of the sun, as its rays first illuminated the horizon, the sleep of Yavanna ended, and the long rest of living things across the world came to an end. Nature itself seemed to exhale, bursting forth with vitality once more. Thus began a new era, wherein the very air of Middle-earth was infused with the vitality of growth and mortality. The cycle of life accelerated as all things began to change and age with swiftness. The land flourished, teeming with life in what would be known in later history as the second spring of Arda. Under the caress of the sun, the Eldar thrived, and the once barren lands of Middle-earth blossomed into verdant, lush greenery and beauty. This period marked the reawakening of life by the Celestials, known as the Years of the Sun. At the onset of this age, the Younger Children of Ilúvatar, the men, stirred from their slumber in the distant Hildórien, nestled within the eastern reaches of Middle-earth. The Atani, known to the Eldar as the Second People, emerged, and various names whispered upon the winds described their nature. They were called Hildór, the followers, Apanonar, the afterborn, Engwar, the sickly, and bestowed with many other names. Yet as the celestial fire bathed the farthest reaches of the west in its luminous glow, they became known as the Children of the Sun. Drawn by the allure of the first sunrise, beckoning them towards the promise of the west. And to the land of Hildórien, no Valar ventured to guide men, and where the purposes of the Valar remained concealed, Ulmo's subtle influence flowed like a stream, carrying messages of counsel from Manwë. But the hearts of men were unskilled in the ways of the unseen, and few had found solace and kinship in the waters of the ancient days. Yet, the echoes of knowledge from the Morriquendi, the dark elves, reached their ears, forming ancient bonds, blending the language and culture of the first men with those of the Morriquendi. Rumours of the Valar were heard, at least those that the dark elves knew or believed they knew. The elves and men stood as equals in stature and strength, yet the elves possessed greater wisdom, skill, and beauty. Those who beheld the holy light of Valinor surpassed the dark elves in splendour, just as they, in turn, surpassed the race of mortals. However, men were more frail, more easily slain by weapon or mischance, and less easily healed, subject to sickness and many ills, and they grew old and died. Amidst this contrast, the gift of men shone brightly, their mortality granting them freedom, a release from the confines of Arda. Elves, on the other hand, faced immortality, their spirits bound to the world even beyond death. Morgoth's corruption instilled fear, turning death into a foreboding fate instead of a cherished release. In this interplay of differences, the destiny of men and elves intertwined, each bearing their own burdens and blessings upon the stage of Arda. What may befall their spirits after death, the elves know not. Some say that they too go to the halls of Mandos, but their place of waiting there is not that of the elves, and Mandos under Ilúvatar alone knows whither they go after the time of recollection in the halls of the dead. At the dawn of this age, Morgoth's spies were vigilant, and tidings of their rise were swiftly carried to his dark lair. Concealed in shadow, Morgoth himself departed from Angband, entrusting Sauron with the mantle of command. His dealings with men remained veiled from the eyes of the Eldar, yet the darkness that clung to the hearts of men was palpable, even among those who would later be known as the Elf Friends.
To corrupt or destroy whatsoever arose new and fair was ever the chief desire of Morgoth. And doubtless he had this purpose also in his errand, by fear and lies, to make men the foes of the Eldar, and bring them up out of the east against Beleriand. But this design was slow to ripen, and was never wholly achieved. For men, it is said, were at first very few in number, whereas Morgoth grew afraid of the growing power and union of the Eldar, and came back to Angband, leaving behind at that time but few servants, and those of less might and cunning.
And thus Morgoth's whispers tainted the hearts of men, leading them to bow before him and forsake Ilúvatar's light. And thus in their youth, men came to believe that death was Morgoth's curse upon them, his corruption woven into their very beginnings. But fate's tapestry weaves a tangled web, where oral tradition and the fleeting lives of men blur the lines between truth and superstition. And what knowledge did men possess under Morgoth's sway, the Dark Lord, to whom they bowed as a deity, a sovereign of the earth? But what of this knowledge? What of the porous boundary between law and wisdom? Does truth hold dominion, or is it all but a haze of belief and fact, wisdom and folly?
And many among the race of men turned from the light and plunged into heresy. At Morgoth's bidding, shadowed cults arose, twisting their hearts with whispers of forbidden power. Under his command, they built the house of the Lord, a temple of dread, vast and cold. Men gathered there in fear and awe, to pledge their lives to the Dark One's law. And he answered from the lands afar, his voice a murmur of shadowed war. He spoke of power, of strength through might, promising rule in the endless night. The cruel grew stronger, the strong grew feared, their hearts with malice and hatred seared. Yet those who defied him found only pain, dragged to the house never seen again. Bound and broken they met their doom, consumed by fire in shadowed tomb. The air grew thick with death's foul breath, and the cries of the lost foretold their death. But some fled west with a flicker of light, carrying hope through the endless night.